time for exciting Major Soccer League action featuring the world champion San Diego Sockers on the San Diego Cable Sports Network. Live Sockers action is brought to you in part by McDonald's, proud official sponsor of the McDonald's Junior Sockers and Summer Camp programs. By the Auto Trader. For effective and inexpensive advertising, pick up a copy of the Auto Trader. By U.S. Air. U.S. Air begins with you. And by Corona Beer. Enjoy Corona Extra and Corona Light. And now, here come the world champion Sockers, live on the San Diego Cable Sports Network.
As the defending champion San Diego Sockers take on the St. Louis Storm. A pleasant Good Friday afternoon, everybody. Welcome live to St. Louis. I'm Randy Hahn as the San Diego Sockers continue their four-game road trip here today against the St. Louis Storm. It's always great when these two teams meet. At least it has been in the first 2 years of the Storm existence. They're always close, more often than not overtime games. We look forward to another good matchup here today. Let's first look at the San Diego Sockers scoring up to this point of the season. Paul Wright very quickly has jumped to the top of the scoring table, 5 goals and 6 assists for 11 points. Right behind him, Brian Quinn, but Brian will be out of the lineup tonight. And another one to watch for, John Kerr Jr., a rookie this year, already with 6 points for San Diego. For the St. Louis Storm, some familiar names at the top. Preki with 16 points. And Branko Segota, the former Socker, with 6 goals and 6 assists. Down at the bottom of the list, another ex-San Diegan, Fernando Clavillo, contributing with 4 points so far from the defense. Joining us now is Sockers head coach Ron Newman. And Ron, your team is playing pretty well right now. You're coming off a loss in Baltimore, but that game in Cleveland, you were almost clinical, and it looked like your team was very comfortable with one another, considering you have a lot of new players.
Well, I thought we played 3.5 games of very, very good soccer, Randy, and quite surprising, I think, at this time of the year, because normally we're slow starters, and suddenly I'm seeing the team playing almost playoff type of soccer. So I've been very pleased. We marred it a little bit in the last half against Baltimore, but now this week without Brian Quinn, we've got to see what we can do.
Let's look at some of the head-to-head matchups in this game and some of the keys to victory. Your team has tremendous team speed this year, Ron, and your balanced scoring as well should make up somewhat for the absence of Brian tonight.
Well, this is what I told the lads just a few minutes ago, is that we've lost Quinn and we don't have Alex Golovnia, but neither of those players are particularly known for their speed, so we've still got our speed, and we've got to try and make sure that we show St. Louis we've got more speed than they have.
Now, Preki and Branko do much of the scoring for the Storm, but Ted Eck is a young guy to watch for. He's really coming on.
Yeah, Ted sort of found the indoor game a little awkward, but he's a very good outdoor player, and I've expected that he would gradually make his mark in this league as he gets more experience.
All right, so we're set to go. It's the San Diego Sockers continuing their 4-game road trip here this afternoon against the St. Louis Storm. And we'll be back with all the live play-by-play action in a moment. It's the Sockers in St. Louis on the San Diego Cable Sports Network. 7-10 against St. Louis. This is the 18th regular season meeting, and they have all been very, very close. Starting in goal for the San Diego Sockers, there he is, Victor Nogueira. There's his record, 3-3. He's played each and every game for the Sockers. A goals against average that is number 1 in the league right now, 4.81 on the year. And down at the other end, although he hasn't occupied that spot yet, you see him along the glass. The former Socker Jim Gorsuch recently signed here in St. Louis. He has played 1 game. He has a 5.00 goals against average. Jim was not with any club when he was signed by St. Louis. He is on a 15-day short-term contract, but that is likely to be extended to a season-long contract, replacing Zoltan Toth, who surprisingly retired. And that's a man who is as surprised as anyone. Don Popovich won his first 4 MSL titles with the New York Arrows and has gone on to coach a number of franchises, and now is here in St. Louis at the helm. And next to him, down on the other bench for the San Diego Sockers, Ron Newman. Won his 300th regular season game against the Cleveland Crunch last weekend. One of the more impressive San Diego victories, actually the most impressive this season, as they completely dominated the Crunch. Officiating tonight here in St. Louis, the man on the foreground, Kelly Mock. Beside him to our right is Casey Frankowitz, and the box official, and you see him in his perch, Holly Hollingsworth. That's our officiating crew as we are just about set to go here in St. Louis. Part of an extended 4-game road swing for the Sockers, which has been broken up by a trip back to Southern California. where they spent the past week after games in Cleveland and Baltimore last weekend. Tonight here in St. Louis, and then on to Wichita tomorrow. And that'll be the end of 4 straight away from home, as the Sockers will have been away from the San Diego Sports Arena for the better part of a couple of weeks. Victor Nogueira, right now the only goalkeeper the San Diego Sockers have on the roster. And they are really counting on Victor to remain healthy. Wes Wade is the backup. Of course, he's also a field player. And the Sockers, obviously, in the back of their minds, have the thought that at some point this year, they may be forced to sign another goalkeeper. And I think, to be totally honest, they were a little disappointed to see Gorsuch picked up by the St. Louis Storm. They sort of looked at Gorsuch as a possible fill-in should Nogueira go down with an injury or need some rest. There's a look at Jimmy's numbers in his long career. Look at the one-loss record, 104 and 59, and a great career goals against average of 4.34. In fact, Gorsuch is right at the top of the list when you look at career numbers among goalkeepers in San Diego history. He has the 3rd best career goals against average in the club's history. He's number 2 overall in wins, behind only Zoltan Toth. And number 1, interestingly, among all Sockers goalkeepers career-wise in points. Jim has 19 points in his San Diego Sockers history as a player. And, of course, he had that great defense in front of him for all of his years in San Diego, anchored by a number of people, not the least of which is that man, number 12, Kevin Crowe. That was in the latter years. Of course, in the earlier years, Gorsuch had people like Wojciechowski in front of him and Martin Donnelly. And, of course, throughout his career, that man, Ron Newman, who has his back to us, was giving Jim Gorsuch the opportunity to play. And Gorsuch was really one of those guys who really had to battle to get into the San Diego lineup and prove time in and time out to Newman that he could make it. And Gorsuch persevered and eventually became the Sockers' number 1 goalkeeper for a number of years. And then the arrival of Zoltan Toth developed a new situation, really, where the Sockers split their goalkeeping between Toth and Gorsuch. And then eventually Toth assumed the number 1 spot by himself. And really what hurt Gorsuch from the standpoint of not being in San Diego anymore, quite simply, is the salary cap. It got too expensive to have 2 top-notch goalkeepers. And thus Gorsuch went to Kansas City, where he spent a number of seasons, but never really has had the primary role in goal since leaving San Diego a number of years ago. And perhaps he'll reassume that position here in St. Louis now with the aging Slobo Ilievsky, the other goalkeeper here, and Gorsuch brought in to fill a gap left by the retirement of Zoltan Toth just 3 games into St. Louis season, stunning everyone around the league, not the least of which the Storm management and coaching staff here in St. Louis. But it's an opportunity for Gorsuch, and he hopes to improve on his lifetime record against his former team here in St. Louis tonight. There's Thompson Usean and Ben Collins as we are just about set to go. We're going to get an opportunity to visit with Thompson Usean tonight at halftime here in St. Louis. And we are underway live in St. Louis. Game 2 of the season between the Sockers and the Storm. Gorsuch with it now in the penalty area. The pass ahead to his former teammate in San Diego, and now here with St. Louis, Branko Segota. This is Clavillo, as this St. Louis lineup is checkered with former Sockers. And with the arrival of Usean now, there are former Storm players in the San Diego lineup. Here's Ladouceur. Lead ball ahead for Usean. Greg Muir back defensively. If it looks a little cloudy in the St. Louis end, it's because they had some dry ice here in their pregame ceremonies, but it's dissipating as we speak. Ball played deep now into the Sockers zone. We are just underway, less than a minute in. Here's John Klein for St. Louis, across to Preki. Preki off to a tremendous start this year in the MSL. Ahead to Segota, turns and scores! Branko Segota with a beautiful move in front of the goal on Jacques Ladouceur, and then the turnaround shot to beat Victor Nogueira. And 55 seconds into the game, St. Louis with the 1-0 lead. Well, Branko Segota, who is in the best shape maybe in the last 10 years of his career, great move on Ladouceur, who had a hold of his hand, trying to grab a little bit of Segota that he could, but Branko with his strength spinning off and finding the top corner. And Segota gets his 7th goal of the year and puts St. Louis in front very early here at the arena. Back to the live action now as Ladouceur still on the field. Plays one off the board trying to find John Kerr in front, but Gorsuch has it. A long throw up for Ted Eck. Eck gets up, heading it forward to George Pastor, but Terry Woodbury won it for San Diego. Here comes Paul Wright. with John Kerr. The pass a little behind Kerr, taken back by the Storm, and it comes to the nearboard side. The scoring play, Segoda 7 from Preki at 55 seconds. So Bronco Segoda establishing himself very early on in this soccer game. Sockers without Brian Quinn, who is with the national team, getting set to play Costa Rica on Sunday in Dallas. So he is not available to the Sockers tonight, and that's part of what they're going to have to live with, having a player on the national team, and they might as well get used to it. George Pastor with the left foot shot, Nogueira with the save. Now a bad defensive play by the Sockers in their own zone. Ekto is pressured. That's number 6, Alex Hapsalis for San Diego in his first game as a Socker. Finally got his work visa. He's a Russian. And we'll get a good look at him tonight. Here's John Kerr. Kerr double teamed on the far side. Kerr spinning off the boards and turns it over to Ted Eck. 1-0 St. Louis leads. 12:42 to go here in the first period. Long ball out of the back by Clavillo. Ahead to Segoda. Challenged by Banks. Works it back out to Preki. Preki going around Hapsalis. Shot off the leg of Tim Whitman and out of play, St. Louis ball. There's Nogueira. Victor, 32 years of age. Now in his 4th season with the San Diego Sockers. Last year's most valuable player in the MSL. And as you saw in those numbers off the top of the telecast, right at the top in goals against average again, no question that Victor Nogueira is the best goalkeeper in the MSL. Here's Preki. Back to Greg Muir. Shot off the outside of the post and back out. This is Hapsalis. Tries the lead pass for Wes Wade. Couldn't break through the defense as Greg Muir got back for St. Louis. Here's Preki. Goes around Hapsalis. Plays it back post, but moving away from the ball was George Pastor. Or check that, it's Kevin Hummel. And now Nogueira with it for San Diego. 1-0. St. Louis leads on the Segoda goal as Woodbury plays it back to Nogueira. Sockers also without Alex Golovnia tonight. He is sitting out a game with what they're calling turf toe. He injured himself at halftime in the game at Baltimore, and that really changed the game. Here's a turnover as Dougherty gives it up to Segoda on to Preki. The great Yugoslavian connection here now with Preki and Segoda. Arguably two of the best Yugoslavians ever to play in the MSL, along with Steve Jungle. Here is Segoda. Fighting off Woodbury. Whitman is there too. It comes out to Daryl Duran. Duran playing it behind Hundle. He'll collect it off the boards. Pushed down, but Banks does not draw the foul, and here's Usein. Back to David Banks. As the Sockers tonight are going to get a look at not only Hapsalis, the Russian, but Zico Doe, who played in their season opener at Dallas but has seen little action, and that's because of the injuries to Golovnia and Quinn. We have a foul. It's against the Storm, and the Sockers will get a free kick to the left side of the Storm goal, as you see Usein talking it over the referee Casey Frankowitz. Thompson Usein with 5 points on the year, couple of goals so far to start. Thompson in his 10th year in the MSL, first year as a San Diego Socker. Off the pass, it comes to Crow at the point. Kicks it into Eck. Now back to Ladouceur. In tight space, Dougherty trying to get a shot away. He's tripped up. It'll come back to Crow, and he'll hit a square pass all the way back to Victor Nogueira. 10:50 to go, first period. 1-0 St. Louis leads on the Segoda goal. It's played into Thompson Usein in the corner. Now Dougherty. Across for Crow. Ladouceur takes it nicely, turns, but then plays a bad ball to Dougherty. Storm get it back. George Pastor playing it to this man, Daryl Duran, who made a transition last year from a forward to a defender, and what a successful transition it was. Had his second best season ever offensively, and also had 93 blocks as a defender. Good year for Daryl Duran. Here's Ben Collins now for San Diego, ahead to Dougherty. Off to Ladouceur. Wade pressured by Daryl Duran, but gets it back to Dougherty. Now back in the corner for Wes Wade. Gorsuch comes out, hits it off the boards, and the Storm will clear the zone. John Klein, nice overlap ball right side. Trying to find his man up the right wing. Preki was there, but the pass a little too far ahead of him. Here's Crow now. Segoda comes back on for St. Louis. Ahead for John Kerr. Kerr, the rookie, and off to a quick start. 6 points already for John. And the coaching staff very happy with his progress so far. Now the Sockers get it back at center. Here's Collins ahead for Kerr. Tried the back heel. He was kicked by Duran, and Kelly Mock's going to call it up near the top of the penalty arc. And the Sockers will get a free kick as you get a closer look at John Kerr, who had no indoor experience in league play up to this season. Played in the Canadian Soccer League last year in Hamilton. Look at those numbers he's posted already. Now the free kick. Collins over the ball. Leaves it for UC and shot. Got it through, but Gorsuch scoops it up. Jim looking to lay off the outlet pass. Drops it across to Daryl Duran and back. 9:18 left in the first period. We're live this evening on the San Diego Cable Sports Network. Glad you're with us on this Friday as the Sockers play the first of two back-to-back, as is usually the situation with the Sockers on the road. Here's UC, nice move, or Paul Wright rather, nice move around Preki. Then the shot, rebound, chance for Kerr. Kerr on his back gets a shot up into Ladouceur. Jacques in traffic, trying to find someone to pass it to. Good swarming defense there in the corner by St. Louis. Pinned Ladouceur along the boards. Now the Sockers will change on the run. Here's Kerr with Paul Wright. Again, they're stopped by that tough St. Louis defense that are playing very strong right now in front of Jim Gorsuch. Back to Segota at center. That's knocked away by Tim Whitman as Bronco fell. Now Kerr plays it across to Ben Collins. Collins looking for Whitman. Preki bearing down and playing good defensive soccer. That's a good trend early in the game for St. Louis. Here's Collins. Nice move to go around Preki. Off to Paul Wright. Here's Paul winding in front to UC and lays it back off. Paul's shot just wide. Rebound to Whitman. He'll drive it into Duran. Rebound comes to Collins, and he puts it upstairs. Gorsuch swats at it. Here's UC and trying to find the rebound. Drives it off into the glass as he's pushed down onto the carpet. Finally cleared by the Storm. Back to Gorsuch. He looks for the quick pass up the right side. As his man there, it's Mark Santel. Santel on the far side, watched there by Collins, gets a step on him, but Ben recovers in the corner. Now Santel plays it out blindly, and Wes Wade steals it for only a moment. Then he loses his shoe. Muir to Segota, back to Greg Muir, back through to Bronco, who saw it late, gets a weak shot. They got by Victor, but wide. Now out to Whitman as the teams change on the run. 7:40 left in the first period here in St. Louis, 1-0 Storm lead. Here's Banks. David looking up front for John Kerr. Kerr watched closely up there, being marked by Hundle. John gets it out to the point for Woodbury. Soft ball. Banks will wait for it. Now to Whitman. Whitman lead pass for Apsalis. Alex goes into the corner, bumping with the St. Louis defender. Got the shot up. Bobbling it was Gorsuch, but then he'll toss it down the other way. Here's George Pastor. Banks is back, and last year's Rookie of the Year, getting the job done and pushing it ahead, is Nogueira to Tim Whitman. Here's Hapsalis. Alex taken down as he got that pass off. Hapsalis, 31 years of age, a veteran of First Division play in Russia. As Kerr now with a step over move takes it down the left side on Greg Muir. John Kerr banking it off the boards. Late getting there is Dougherty, and now a foul against Muir as he pulled down Paul Dougherty, so we'll get the free kick. Paul coming off a big year last season, 43 goals to tie for the team lead with Juan Hermes, 62 points in all. And looking to shoulder a considerable amount of the responsibility from the goal-scoring standpoint again this year is Paul Dougherty. Off the restart to Woodbury, his shot wide as he get it off the left foot. Banks will work it to Woodbury, 6:35 left in the period. And now the ball out of play, and we have a timeout on the field. We will pause with 6:35 left in the first. It's St. Louis 1, San Diego nothing on the San Diego Cable Sports Network. Programs. And after every Sockers goal this year, the Sockers will donate $25 to a special Ronald McDonald's Children's Charities Fund for soccer camp scholarships for underprivileged children. When the Sockers score, they score for RMCC. Back to the live action here in St. Louis. The Storm leading San Diego 1-0 on Bronco Segota's goal in the first minute. Here's Tedek with a steal. A lead pass up the middle. This is John Klein, but a weak shot is handled routinely by Nogueira. Crow calmly playing it across for Terry Woodbury. Woodbury ahead now for Dougherty. Too far for him. Clavio quickly sends it back into Tedek, who misjudged that as it bounces back to Nogueira. Here's Paul Dougherty out of Leamington Spa, England. And what an impression he's made in San Diego in his few short seasons. Pass and a score. Ladouceur beating the defender back there, Terry Brown, and then slipping it underneath Gorsuch. And Jacques ties it up on the setup from Paul Dougherty. And Jim Gorsuch's not going to be happy with that one. It looked like a harmless enough play, but some miscommunication by Gorsuch and Brown as we see Dougherty handling the ball, cuts it to the left side, then a nice move inside. Just slipped it through for Ladouceur, and that was a softie indeed as he beat Gorsuch going down to his right side. Brown had that angle covered, but Gorsuch was going the other way, and Jacques comes up with the goal for San Diego to tie it here in the first period. And beating his former teammate. Jacques' third of the year. Dougherty picks up the assist at 9 minutes. Back to the action as Preki has it on the right point for the Storm. Across for Segota. Crow stepped on it. Bronco gets it back. In front, it's laid off to the line for John Klein. Mark Santel will just take it back to center. The scoring play, Ladouceur's third from Dougherty at 9 minutes. 1-1 our score. We're live in the first period. Still 5:20 to go. Here's Clavillo, who interestingly will also play for the national team on Sunday against Costa Rica outdoors, but was not required to join them as Quinn was and missed this game. And there's some controversy over that. Ron Newman's feeling being, if players are called for the national team, fair enough, but it ought to be the same for all teams. If Clavillo's going to play Sunday, then he should miss tonight's game as Quinn was required to do. And you can bet there'll be some inquiries as to why that didn't happen. Daryl Duran playing it from midfield up to Segota. Segota, watched by Kevin Crow, plays it back out to Preki. Preki pushing it far post. Nice ball intended for Hundle, but Nogueira read it well. Here's Whitman, who had a couple of goals when these teams met in San Diego for the season opener. Sockers played well that night, losing 6-5 in overtime. But remember, it was their first game back with Quinn and Paul Wright. And all things considered, not a bad result. Here's Whitman again, a drive, and Gorsuch trying to make the save. As Whitman got some space, and we saw that speed of his as he came down the left side. It comes back down to the other end, and it'll bounce out before Gorsuch can reach it. With 4:09 left here in the first period, we have an official timeout called now on the field with the score tied 1-1. Now the Sockers will hold their first of two youth soccer nights. Saturday, November 30th, they'll host the American Youth Soccer Association and the Dallas Sidekicks. That's a 7:35 kickoff at the Sports Arena. All AYSO players, families, and friends can take advantage of a special $6 ticket price for that game only. All youths 19 and under at the game will also receive a pack of Soccer Shots MSL trading cards. And they will have a chance to participate in the AYSO Youth Soccer Night Kick-On Goal Contest. That will immediately follow the game. If you'd like to take advantage of this special $6 Youth Soccer Night ticket price, just call David Gross at the Sockers office at 224-GOAL. The number again is in the 619 area code 224-4625. Ron Newman talking things over on the San Diego bench with the lads. And there's Don Popovich, the always controversial figure wherever he coaches. Players either love this guy or can't stand this guy, it seems. He's got a lot of people in his corner. Of course, he won the championships with the New York Arrows, but he's a disciplinarian. He's very strong and forthright in his opinions, and some players clash with that. In fact, word this week that he had a controversy with Mirko Castillo, a veteran forward out of the NPSL who's now with St. Louis. We've not seen Castillo so far on the field. He is on the bench. Here's Paul Wright for San Diego down the right side. He has Kerr with him. Plays it to the near side, kicked away by Gorsuch. Paul Wright now back for David Banks. 1-1 the score. Banks, nice ball for Kerr. But Gorsuch, that was a great read coming out of the penalty area. Out to the top of the box and head that one away. Here's Woodbury showing some confidence in midfield. Pressured by Segota. Plays it back. Now out to Banks. Long ball up the left side. Woodbury with good speed. Off the bounce. Trying to work it to Kerr in front. Here's Ladouceur, who has the only San Diego goal. Segota steps in front of him and plays it back. Now they headman it out to Terry Brown. Out to Segota. Nogueira back, and it was behind him but came off the wall. Bronco with the left foot. And Nogueira a little late to adjust and get back into his defensive position, and Segota nearly caught him. Often that's the kind of ball that'll come off that wall behind the goalkeeper, hit him in the heel, and go in. Nogueira a little lucky there that it caromed back out. 2:45 left in the first period. 1-1 our score. As Banks plays it back to Victor. Nogueira looks up for Usean. Pressured by Clavillo as it comes free. Now Fernando running off the ball. But Ted Eck couldn't get it to him as Usean made a nice play. Then a nice move. Now plays it far side. Whitman and Dougherty both there, but it's between them. And instead kicked by the St. Louis defender. Meantime, Woodbury comes back to Dougherty. Back to Woodbury. Has Whitman there. Uses him. Tim will come across to David Banks in midfield. Good crowd on hand here in St. Louis tonight. Nice to see as Nogueira plays it up into the corner for Usean. Thompson watched by Clavillo, lays it off to Whitman, who miskicked it. It'll come to Banks. He'll poke it toward the goal, and it's scooped up by Gorsuch. And he'll hold it for St. Louis with under 2 minutes to go in the opening period of play. Fernando Clavillo, now in his 10th season in the MSL. He's the playing assistant coach here in St. Louis. Of course, made San Diego his home for a number of seasons. 6-time All-Star in the MSL. Here's Preki. He's been an All-Star every year he's been in the league. Whitman with the steal and back to Dougherty. Ball comes up to center. Watched there by Santel. Over to Collins. West Wade shoved by Clavillo. No whistle as Ben will play it back to center. Crow with Segota pressuring sends it back to the goalkeeper Nogueira. Sockers make a change. John Kerr gets on up front. There's the ball right to him. Collects it with his right foot. Settles it nicely for Ben Collins. Now running left side is Whitman. Nice ball out of the corner from Dougherty. In front they score! Oh, what a great play by the Sockers. Engineered by Paul Dougherty's brilliant ball out of the midfield. Very alert running by Whitman. And a great change as Kerr came on and got into position, and the Sockers lead 2-1. This is textbook San Diego soccer. Here is Dougherty with the great pass outside of his right foot. And that gave the ball a little bit of a spin, kept it from going too close to the boards. And Whitman, knowing he was at a tight angle, centered it for Kerr rather than try for the bad angle shot. And that will be Kerr, not Wade, with the goal. You saw Wade there, but it's John Kerr who scores the goal. And he continues to impress in his first season. He came on a great bench change just as the Sockers got possession in the back, and they quickly and alertly used that great change to their advantage and created a goal. That was pretty. 2-1 now, San Diego, under a minute in the first period. Here's Ben Collins back up the right side. Collins stopped at the red line as Ladouceur overlaps. Ben will shoot it left foot, deflects into the corner. Kerr is there, pressured by Duran, and the ball comes to Eck. Eck trying to work it ahead to Hundle. Ben Collins. Crow up for Kerr. John in the corner. Again, watched closely by Darryl Duran, and John Kerr, with the kind of numbers he's posting early in his career, is going to start getting some respect from the defenders like Darryl Duran. They will know about him all very quickly. Not many secrets in this league of 7 teams. When a guy gets hot, he's playing well, everybody knows about it. Here's Crow up the left side. Kerr with it. Back it comes off the foot of Duran to Ben Collins. Now 1 second left, and that'll be the first period. And an impressive first period it is. The Sockers playing without their midfield orchestrator, if you will, Brian Quinn, who is with the national team, but they get a great bit of play from Dougherty on that last goal particularly, and they take the lead at the end of a period here in St. Louis. It's San Diego 2, the St. Louis Storm 1. You're watching the Major Soccer League on the San Diego Cable Sports Network. Telecast of the San Diego Sockers from here in St. Louis. Sockers lead it 2-1 after the first period, a period that Ron Newman has to be particularly pleased about. I would think the early goal by Segota 55 seconds in did not set things off on a positive tone, but the Sockers settled down, recovered, and got 2 goals of their own. Look at those shots to goals ratio. Sockers with 12 shots in the first period. St. Louis with only 3. Sockers with a couple of goals. Gorsuch came up with a couple of strong saves, but a very balanced performance by San Diego after the early goal by Segota. The Sockers goals by Ladouceur, his 3rd from Dougherty at 9 minutes, and then John Kerr, his 5th in his rookie season. Tim Whitman got an assist at 13:57, and Victor Nogueira likes that kind of support in front of him from this relatively young and new San Diego team. So many changes in the offseason as Ron Newman had to rebuild his franchise literally from scratch again. But the Sockers right in the thick of it coming into this game with a record of 3-3, identical to that of St. Louis. We're back underway to start the second period live in St. Louis. Sockers now defending the net to our right and attacking right to left. St. Louis with the ball. This is Daryl Duran. Shot from long, and that goes wide. Alex Hapsalis for San Diego. Ahead for Wes Wade. Duran will get that back and quickly play it to John Klein. Look at Wes and his hustle as the Sockers get the ball back, but it's played by Terry Brown through the legs of Banks. David will get it back from Woodbury, and it's played back to Noguera. Sockers are coming off a loss, but it was one of those losses where they played well despite the final outcome. An 8-7 loss in Baltimore. They were ahead 5-3 at the half and then lost it in the second half after failing to score on a 5-on-3 power play, and also after having lost Golovnia, and I alluded to that in the first period. What that does when a starting defender goes down, it reduces the number of options you have as far as switching off your defense and giving players rest. Here's a chance for St. Louis. Out of the corner, Clavillo playing it around. It comes to the near side and taken back by Usean. Across for Banks now as we're a minute and a half into the second period. Sockers with a 2-1 lead after they initially trailed 1-0. Woodbury, a crisp left foot pass in for Usean, marked tightly by Greg Muir. Thompson banking it off the boards. Neat job to get it to Ladouceur, but a lot of people in the way. Now a loose ball for Woodbury, who's got a good left foot, but he didn't get all of that one. And it was considerably off the target. Muir now playing it right back out to the point for Paul Wright. Here's Paul moving in on Clavillo. Pokes it ahead and right to Ted Eck. Back to Clavillo. Dangerous ball there with Usean in the neighborhood, but Fernando makes up for the bad ball with his quickness. Sockers force the turnover, though. Jacques through the legs again. The Korsic with a pretty routine stop, and he lays it off to Clavillo. Before Golovnia went out of that game last weekend, the Sockers basically had 5 defenders in the rotation. So every other shift, a defender's going to get an extra long rest. But when Alex went down, the Sockers had to switch in a 4-man rotation, and that means you're on for a minute, off for a minute, or even on for a minute and a half sometimes. And a player like Terry Woodbury, who's just getting used to the San Diego system, not to blame him for the outcome in Baltimore, but it's an adjustment. And players aren't as sharp when they don't have that rest between shifts. And it makes a big difference when you lose that one man, as the Sockers did. And it impacted on the game in Baltimore, no question about it, as they were basically in a situation where the blast started to wear them down as the game went on. Not to mention, they played back-to-backs, and, of course, the travel on the day of the game. That's something the Sockers are pretty much used to, though, and a lot of teams in the league face that. But it seems no team more so than San Diego. Schedule's never easy for the Sockers. Here's Collins. Weaves his way past Ted Eck. 12:05 left here in the second period. 2-1, the Sockers leading St. Louis. Get into it in a moment. How many one-goal games have been played between these teams in just 2 seasons plus? It's tremendous how close it's been. You probably remember last year some of the stats as far as how many of these games went into overtime. It is amazing. Here is Crow. Kevin playing it up the near side for John Kerr, who has his 6th goal of the year here tonight. Just got his 5th. Here's Daryl Duran, forced all the way back, and he'll play it to Gorsic as Kerr steps right up to the veteran and pressures Gorsic. John Kerr, great work rate. Very pleasurable to watch him play. Seems to have fit into the system, at least early on here, very, very well. Crow, nice defensive play against Segota. Across to Ben Collins. Probably the best defensive twosome in the MSL, Collins and Crow. Here's Ben, nice pass to Kerr. Collects it, shoots off the wall. Whitman had it. Oh, great chance for Tim Whitman. But that ball coming off that back wall with some pace on it, and he was just unable to deaden it enough to get a shot off, and it went off his foot back into the wall. And we pause with 11:05 left here in the second period. 2-1 Sockers. Trip fans can follow all the action from the Kansas Coliseum. We'll be live on 76 KFMB radio at 5:25 tomorrow afternoon with our pregame show. 76 KFMB, radio home of the world champion Sockers and Hudson and Bauer. Mornings at 7:60 a.m. 76 KFMB. Back to the live action here in St. Louis. And a foul in midfield. They're going to call it against Zico Doe, who gets his first look at the game for San Diego. Doe wearing number 40. and playing in midfield for the Sockers tonight. Here's Clavillo. Ahead and off of George Pastor's foot. This is Zico Doe. Played in the outdoor league last year. This is his first look at the indoor game. He was the rookie of the year and a first-team All-Star in the APSL last season. That's the American Professional Soccer League. Played at the Colorado Foxes. Doe gets a touch of the ball over to Whitman. Tim plays it to the board. Zico stepping in front of the St. Louis player Hundled. Shot from the outside and a good one by Clavillo. Knocked down by Noguera. 2-1 San Diego leads. 10:18 to go here in the second period. We are live on this Friday evening. Here in the Midwest, temperatures very mild here as autumn continues in the Midwest. In the 50s here in St. Louis. Very pleasant. Although we all know how quickly it can change. Here's George Pastor, meantime, for the Storm. With Segota and Muir. Pastor to Bronco. Segota moving in on Crow. Shot through his legs, but Victor Noguera saw it all the way. Little bobble, but he picks it up and drops it down to Kevin. If you joined us late, Sockers without Brian Quinn in this game, and they will not have him tomorrow in Wichita either. Quinn training with the national team for their game against Costa Rica on Sunday at Texas Stadium in Dallas. We have a foul. There's Ladouceur, who's had his stints with the national team in the past as well. Not part of Bora Milutinovic's program at this point, however. Here's Usian back for Terry Woodbury. Woodbury ahead for Ladouceur. And that's off his foot and played back out into midfield for Segota. Bronco, the second all-time leading scorer in this league's history. Truly has been, over the years, one of the greatest players in the game. But turns it over. Here's Ladouceur looking for Dougherty on the overlap. Paul, nice run, and then the turn. Comes back to Ladouceur. That one skips by. On the rebound, another chance. Here's Woodbury blasting one. It'll go out the far post side, and Pastor will play it out to Preki. As the Storm got disorganized in their own end, but the Sockers unable to capitalize. Now the counterattack. Sockers a little late on the change, but now they make it and get it completed as Preki has the ball. Across the line, Whitman backing in. Preki goes around him as Whitman's down. Back through the middle. Chance in front for Santel. That's knocked away. Now Hapsalis is shoved. Rebound comes down to Klein. Wade gambles. It's Preki with it. It's too high. Wes Wade rolling the dice there, and Preki with a clear shot, but he put it high. Now in front to Eck. Knocked away. Here's Hapsalis to Wes Wade. Wade with good speed, but Clavillo's back. Here's West with Hapsalis. Wade tripped up, and they will give the foul. Wes Wade, who 2 games ago was splendid in Cleveland. Hat-trick performance against the Crunch. Here he is on the restart. That's just high. Comes back down to Ben Collins. Before he can settle it, Preki poked it. Now to Whitman. He'll try and wrap it around as Collins made the run toward the crease, but Gorsuch's got it. He'll roll it up to Preki. Here's Preki with Ted Eck. Preki across the line, cuts it back inside. Whitman covering there defensively, and that's good hustle by Tim Whitman getting back as Banks and Collins were already in their defensive positions. 7:50 left here in the second period. 2-1 San Diego leading all the goals scored in the game's first period. Ladouceur with his 3rd for San Diego, and John Kerr with his 5th. Segota with his 7th for the Storm. Foul up in midfield, as it is John Kerr Jr. brought down as you see him get back up. All right on the restart into Kerr. The defender Muir fell. Kerr trying to put it through the legs. Of course it can't. Clavillo clears it, but right to David Banks. Cross for Ben Collins. Quickly ahead for Ladouceur. Jacques turning, playing it the other side of Kerr. John a little late to react to that, and Gorsuch has it in the penalty area. Here's Kevin Hundled. Signed as a free agent. He was with Kansas City last year. He's a good little player, Kevin Hundled. Midfielder. 5th season in the league. Had 44 points last year. He's the Comets' 4th leading scorer. Actually started his career here with St. Louis, but then ended up in Kansas City. Here he is, playing it ahead for Eck. Ted being watched by David Banks. Then double teamed as Kerr came in. Banks will hurry to the corner, trying to get to it. Kerr plays it toward his own goal. A St. Louis player was there. Dangerous ball. Now Duran with it. Watched by Kerr. Nice ball to Muir. His shot in the box, but kicked out by George Pastor. And we get a timeout on the field with 6:37 left here in the second period, and the Sockers leading 2-1. Well, all youths 19 and under guaranteed to have a ball with the Sockers on Sunday, December 15th, when they host the Tacoma Stars at 6:05 at the Sports Arena. All youths in attendance at that game that night will receive a great stitched soccer ball, compliments of Carl's Jr. and B100 FM. Ball night tickets for December 15th against Tacoma on sale now at the Sports Arena box office, all Ticketmaster locations, or call the Sockers at 224-GOAL. Get your tickets now. Have a ball with the Sockers. Compliments of Carl's Jr. and B100 FM. 6:37 left here in the second period. Ron Newman talking to Zico Doe, and that's Hapsalis right beside him as he backs out of our camera range. There's Hapsalis in the foreground. Ron Newman getting an opportunity to see what these two can do. And actually, the timing couldn't be better from the standpoint of Quinn being out because of the national team commitment. This is the Sockers' 7th game of the season. They have until the 12th game of the season to freeze their roster. Now, players like Hapsalis and Zico Doe, and John Kerr to some extent, although he's established himself, I think, already to the point where he's not in danger of perhaps being cut. But for some of those others who've not had the floor time that Kerr has had, they need to impress themselves upon the coaching staff by the 12th game. If they are on the roster after the 12th game, their salaries are guaranteed for the year. So the Sockers will be looking up to the 12th game to see how those players do. And, of course, right around that 12th game, there'll be some other players available around the league as it's kicked out by Banks on the restart. So this is actually good timing for San Diego, for Newman to have an opportunity to look at Hapsalis and Zico Doe. Pressure on them, obviously, to show that they know this game and in a hurry. And for a player like Hapsalis, it's not that easy to just fit into the indoor game. Really, it took Alex Golovnia the better half of a season last year before he was finally comfortable and was able to find his spot within the San Diego system. So some pressure on those two young men on this road trip. Ball into the corner. Segota chesting it down, flicks it in front. Nice ball. But Terry Brown's shot was partially blocked by Whitman out of play. And we'll get a corner kick as Brown got good service from the right side. And that ball was right there for him. But Whitman played some good tight defense and got a part of his body on that ball. Another look as Bronco really with a no-look pass. And Brown hit it first time, got around with the right foot. But Whitman positioning himself well in front of Brown and also not to screen that man, Victor Nogueira. And now the corner kick. Duran with Segota poised for a shot. And he'll get the ball, drives it right into Crow. Kevin trying to clear it as Duran pokes it away. Now Terry Woodbury looking upfield. Wes Wade coming from this side to the other. Good ball. Here's a good read by Wade as he tried to exploit Gorsuch, who was still backing into the goal, but Preki blocked it. That was just a nice play, and that's a very deliberate act there with Wade coming from one side to the other. That's the way they use Wes. He'll run from one side across. Often it'll be the goalkeeper distributing to it. Here's Victor in front. Chance for Usean, but it bounces past him to Jim Gorsuch with 5:52 to go in what so far has been a scoreless second period. It is 2-1 San Diego. All the goals coming in the first period. Duran back for Jim Gorsuch, and he'll play it into open space. Maybe anticipating someone making a run, but it wasn't there. Of course, this is only Gorsuch's second game with St. Louis, so there's still some communication things to be worked out between goalkeeper and teammates. Here's Mark Santel. Santel, a first-year player, picked up in a trade for Wichita. He was the first overall draft pick of the Wichita Wings, and then they dealt him away. He was the first overall pick in the league. Segota back to Clavillo. Now here's John Klein. Clavillo looking up front for Preki. Woodbury's there, gets a bad bounce, heads it right into Preki. Dangerous play there, and it all started off that lip of the board bounce. It came back to Woodbury, and now a foul called against the Storm as Tim Whitman comes onto the San Diego bench. And Whitman, another player that's just fit in so well here in his first year with the Sockers. Of course, an 11-year veteran. All of those prior years with Baltimore, his hometown, and really enjoying the transition from the Baltimore style to the San Diego style is Tim Whitman. He was the fourth best scorer on the Blast last year with 54 points, but was available as a free agent as Kenny Cooper was reworking his lineup. Ball out off Kerr as They're going to call they're going to turn it around and call the foul on Kerr, or at least say the ball went off him last. We'll see how they initiate the play here. Probably a kick in, so they'll say it went off John last. John's 26, so while he's a rookie, he's played his share of soccer. In fact, played over in Europe in the English First Division for a spell with Portsmouth. Banks, smart play across his own penalty area to the far board side. Now the Storm come thundering back as Eck banks it off the boards. Jacques Ladouceur is there. And he'll play it out to midfield, and Clavillo will have to chase back. Pressured by John Kerr, but gets it away to Jim Gorsuch with 4:20 left in the first half. Coming up at halftime, a visit with Thompson Usean. This is a homecoming for him. He had a big year here with St. Louis last season, Tomo did. 64 goals and 38 assists for 102 points. But was part of the biggest trade of the offseason in the MSL, coming to San Diego for Bronco Segota. Here's George Pastor in the corner against Ladouceur as the Storm try to equalize here as they trail by a goal in the second period. Ball goes off the referee, Kelly Mott. And there'll be a foul called after that. A free kick given to St. Louis deep in San Diego territory. And quickly they make a change and get Preki on the field. Clavillo just delaying a little bit to let Preki come on. There's Fernando talking it over with Mock. Now Clavillo looks for Preki, who comes over to the side of him. At the back post is Kevin Hundle, and Ted X also in the box. You have some good finishers there. It comes to Muir. They work it back post for Hundle, but he missed the redirect. Nice play, but Hundle unable to capitalize. Back to Preki. At the red line, John Kerr missed on his attempt to poke it away. Don't feel too bad, John. You're one of many that have missed an attempt to take the ball away from Preki. Now Ben Collins against Clavillo, but Fernando confident in his speed, able to get back in time. This is Muir. Greg Muir in his second MISL season. Back it comes to Gorsuch. Now the Storm and Sockers changing on the run as Wes Wade comes on as the defensive runner for San Diego. Gets the block right away off Daryl Duran, but it comes back over to the other side. Hundle now playing it across for John Klein. Pressured by Dougherty as the clock ticks down to 3 minutes here in the second period. Paul with some good work up front, just forcing the ball. Gorsuch passing it ahead. This is Hundle. Looks for Preki and finds him. Preki, the leading scorer among Storm players, with 6 goals and 5 assists on the year. That was before tonight, as his 12th point on the setup on the Segota goal 55 seconds into the game. Preki tackled by Collins. Up the right side they go. Eck with the ball off the wall, and coming through the box with the shot is Hundle. He's tripped up, but they'll give it to San Diego with 2:24 left in the period. And as we mentioned, good crowd on hand here in St. Louis tonight, where they are averaging 9,001 per game so far this year. This, of course, also home of the St. Louis Blues, so they compete within their city among the wintertime sports, as the Sockers do. However, to a lesser extent, San Diego's competition with the Gulls. St. Louis Blues are a hot ticket here in St. Louis with, of course, Brent Hull. But a crowd average of 9,000 a game has to be encouraging for the ownership here in St. Louis. Here's Daryl Duran to center. Duran up the left side, pass to Pastor. Nice ball off the wall, but Woodbury, very good defense in front of Noguera to settle that, and then use his size to block off Daryl Duran and let Victor collect that ball. Here's Paul Wright. Paul to center. Passing it ahead for Usean. He'll slow it down and back it to Kevin Crow. Now in deep for Usean against Terry Brown. That's a good matchup for San Diego. Thompson back out to Crow, but Kevin got over to, or actually leaned back on that ball and left puts it into the crowd. Some nice playmaking, though, by Thompson Usean to get that ball to Paul Wright. There's a look from behind Jim Gorsuch. Jim has to be happy to be back in the MSL. Kind of left in the lurch for a while, and I understand was considering playing in the other league, the NPSL, but happy to be with St. Louis. Down to a minute 35 here in the second period. Steele, Wes Wade, now to Paul Wright. Good speed on the field. Crow comes in with Wade. Wright from the point, and he kicks it right into Clavillo. And Paul would like to have a shot at that again, as Fernando works it back to Jim Gorsick. Sockers turned it over as Wes Wade continues to play that defensive runner so well. And they quickly pounced on the opportunity, sending 3 men forward. But Paul Wright's pass was off the mark. If that's what it was, may have been a shot. Here's Clavillo, the playing assistant coach of the Storm. Ball behind Preki. He'll calmly wait for it off the boards. Now watched by Crow. This is a good battle. Kevin watching Preki. The shot and a goal as it deflected past Victor Nogueira, and there was no way for Victor to react after that, and we're tied. Well, Crow was marking Preki and doing a pretty good job. Preki will take it left side. Kevin there. And that one will deflect off the other San Diego defender, Terry Woodbury, back there. And really, once it hit Woodbury, there was no chance for Nogueira, and Preki will get the goal. We'll wait to see if it's unassisted, but he has his second point. He's been in on both St. Louis goals. 2-2 now with under a minute. Sockers with the ball, but John Klein brings it back out for the Storm up to Segota. They will give Greg Muir an assist on the goal by Preki. Preki sixth at 14:09. Here's David Banks back to Nogueira. Victor pressured. Banks will send it deep. Looking up front for John Kerr. It comes back to Ladouceur. He went up for Kerr again, but now the Storm defense with it as we're down to 20 seconds in the first half. An uplifting goal for St. Louis, who after scoring 55 seconds into the game had been shut out for almost a half. Here's Ben Collins from center. Sockers would love to get one back, but they're going to have to hurry. Time running down. They'll have one shot if Dougherty realizes the time. And he gets there late. Kerr does put it into the net, but after the whistle, a good bit after the whistle. And that will be the end of the first half of play here in St. Louis. And once again, true to form, these teams playing each other very closely, very tough, and some excellent soccer so far through 30 minutes of play here in St. Louis. Coming up at halftime, we'll visit with one of the newest San Diego Sockers, the former Storm forward, Thompson Usia. We're at the half at the arena in St. Louis. It's the Sockers 2, the Storm 2, and you're watching the Major Soccer League on the San Diego Cable Sports Network. Goal of the year, that came at 13:57, Sockers up 2-1. Only one goal in the second period, and it would be Preki as he would get his sixth goal of the year. They've changed the assist now, giving it to Clavillo as Preki's shot hits Terry Woodbury and changes direction. Hard to blame Victor Nogueira there. It went one way and turned the other as the Storm players come back out onto the field. Some moderately enthusiastic high fives there. Those are kind of like mid-range fives, not exactly high. And there's Casey Franklin stumbling his way onto the field as we get set to start in a few moments the second half. Don Popovich, the head coach here in St. Louis, trying to overcome 2 straight years of being eliminated in the playoffs by San Diego. I guess you could look at it 2 ways. One way is he'd like to have another crack at the Sockers, or maybe he'd just as soon avoid them in the playoffs if he could, and try and find another way to get to a championship. Talking to Branko Segota, of course, Popovich Yugoslavian, and had a lot to do with Segota's desire to go to St. Louis. And it turned out to be a good trade for both teams, I think. Branko was in a situation in San Diego where I think he had done all he felt he could do. He'd won all the championships and was a high-profile athlete in the city. And the Sockers were a changing team, a club in transition. Segota needed a breath of fresh air. The Sockers needed some new talent. Not that Segota didn't have any, but I think everybody just needed a change of scenery. And Branko seems very happy here. His numbers would suggest that he's fit into the system again with Popovich, and all seems well with number 20. Let's check the stats for the first half of play here in St. Louis. You can see the shots on goal. San Diego with the domination in the shot category, 16-9. The St. Louis defense with 7 blocks to the Sockers 4. Jim Gorsick with 7 saves. Not a busy first half for Victor Nogueira, only 3 saves, but really when you look at the goals to shots ratio, not bad for St. Louis. 2 goals on only 9 shots, and we did not have a penalty. in the first 30 minutes of play. And don't forget, we'll be back on the air tomorrow as you see the Sockers come back on the field. Tomorrow, a radio game will be live at 5:25 on 760 AM, 76 KFNB. Join us live from Wichita. There's Zico Doe, who we told you about, getting a look tonight with Brian Quinn sideline, as is Alex Hopselis. And there's a look at the St. Louis Arena. It gives you an idea. There's a very good crowd on hand here for this Friday night of action. St. Louis with one key injury in their lineup. Mark Fredrickson, a veteran defender, out with a stress fracture of his left ankle. It happened almost at the same time as Zoltan Totes retired, and Fredrickson is probably about 10 days away from coming back. There's Ron Newman talking to Ben Collins as they get set for the second half. Sockers have done reasonably well here in St. Louis over the years, particularly against the Storm here. They have a 3-5 record. San Diego last year had the best road record in the MSL, 14-12. If they can play 500 soccer on the road, or a game or two better than that, as they did last year, you have to think they've got a good shot to win the regular season title again. So far, the Sockers, with some impressive play on the road, 2-1 away from home coming into this one, or actually 2-2. Victories in Cleveland, and what an impressive performance last Saturday by the Sockers against the Crunch, and then a victory in Tacoma. And while on the thought, thanks to J. Paul Delacamera for pinch hitting last weekend. While we get set to start the second half, I want to bring you up to date on a couple of other things. We mentioned the U.S. national men's team is getting set to play on Sunday. That's against Costa Rica, and that's a 3 p.m. kickoff Pacific Standard Time. That game will be televised live on Sports Channel America, which makes it difficult for many Southern Californians in the San Diego area to see it because most cable systems don't have it. But if you do, it'll be on at 3, and if you don't, maybe you can find someone with a satellite dish that can show it to you. And how about the women's national team in the Women's World Cup in China? They've advanced to the quarterfinals, getting set to play Taiwan on Saturday night our time. Here's Paul Wright as we're back underway here in the third period. Sockers in St. Louis tie 2-2. The ball out of play over the near side glass, and the Sockers will kick it back in. There you see Usian, who joined us at halftime. Thompson easing his way into the San Diego system, and so far has fit in very well, gaining more and more confidence as each game is played. Ball cleared out by the St. Louis defense, and this will go out for another San Diego kick in. Hard to expect Usian to duplicate the kind of stats he had here last year, because as he stressed, it was a situation here in St. Louis where a lot of the pressure was on him and Preki, and after that, there was not much depth in scoring. San Diego's scoring is so balanced. Year after year, you look at the top 5, even top 10 players in the league in scoring, and you won't find one San Diego Soccer in there. If you do, it's rare. But then you go to the second 10 or positions 11 through 20, and you'll find 5 or 6 Sockers in that group. Very well-balanced scoring. That's always been a tradition of Ron Newman's teams. The exception might be the Julie V early years when he so dominated the sport. Here's Clavia playing it ahead, looking for Segota. Back is Ben Collins, battling against Preki. Ben finally getting it over to Thompson. Usian almost gives it away to Segota. Bronco takes a little dive, but the referee on that side, Casey Frankwitz, not buying into it. On the restart, Tim Whitman, a great run up the left side, but Greg Muir, a nice play to steal it away. Here's Paul Wright. Paul up the middle with Whitman crossing in front. Wright will use his speed, bank it off the wall. Chance for John Kerr, and it bounced off the carpet and up to the top of the glass above the crossbar. Gorsuch wasn't sure where it was for a moment there, but he recovered. Now here's Greg Muir to center. Double teamed and foul. As Muir picks himself up off the carpet and comes up to the St. Louis bench. Here's a look down at the other end of Segota against Usian, and Usian kind of just pushing off Bronco a little bit there. Bronco making it worse than it really was. Here is a chance for George Castor at the doorstep, but the body block made by Noguera. Now up to John Kerr. He has Dougherty up front with him. Kerr tripped up by Klein, and they'll give that foul. So Frankwitz calling it from behind the play, and the Sockers will get a free kick as John Kerr moves up to the penalty area now and gets into position for the set play. Dougherty there with Woodbury and leaves it for him. Terry off the boards for Kerr. Backed in against Darrell Duran, bumped it for Dougherty. That'll be a tough ball most of the time for Paul because of his size. Now Segota back up the left side for George Pastor. We're a minute and 45 seconds into the third period here in St. Louis. 2-2 our score. Here's Pastor. Shot, and Nagara knocks it down. Ladouceur on the rebound. Segota cutting off the pass back to the goalkeeper. Shot gives it away to John Klein, who stepped on it. Oh, what a gift for Klein, and then he misplayed it. Ladouceur trying to recover after that bad turnover, and he does get it back. And Sockers trying to get organized out of their own zone now. Ladouceur losing it again. Here's Segota. Has Preki breaking to the net, but can't get him the ball. Here's Darrell Duran meantime. Duran back for Greg Muir. Plays it in for Terry Brown, who shot at the wall and then hit Nagara. Woodbury in the corner against Dougherty, who kicked it right into Segota. Some sloppy passing back by the Sockers in their own zone. And right now, St. Louis putting on the pressure here in the third. Calvillo, a shot went the other way. Segota rebound, that hit Crow. The Storm continuing to pour it on. Sockers trying to hold it there, and we'll get a drop ball, and that's as good as a ball out of play right now for the Sockers. As Ladouceur gets organized defensively. Storm make a quick change on the drop ball in the corner. Segota back to the point for Calvillo, and he'll play it back out for Greg Muir. St. Louis patiently playing it in the San Diego end here and trying to create a scoring opportunity for themselves. They tied it up with the late goal in the second period by Preki after San Diego held a 2-1 lead for 10 or 12 minutes. Here's Muir up for Preki, watched by Woodbury. Comes back over to this side for Segota. Bronco looking in great shape. Segota just across the line, lays it off to Muir. His shot into the feet of Woodbury. Rebound comes over to Ladouceur. This is a long shift for this group for San Diego. And look for some line changes here. Ladouceur comes to the bench. The ball played up for Crow meantime. Off the ball is Dougherty. The shot save. Rebound. Paul to Westwade. To Crow behind him. And Kevin couldn't get it. Still with possession, however, and toward the net for Dougherty. But Gorsuch's got it. Then he's interfered with by Wade. No foul on the play. And now the Storm trying to headman it up for George Pastor unsuccessfully. Wade comes back. Here's Whitman for Hapsalas. Alex turns, shoots off the defender, and it'll be cleared by Calvillo as he gets it out of trouble. Nagara comes out to get it for San Diego with 10:45 left in the third period. Here's Banks. David will just stand on it and take a look upfield. Nothing that he likes. Plays it back to Nagara. Victor goes long and into the corner for Yusian. Thompson with good size. Gets in front of it. Calvillo is there. Yusian falls. It comes into open space. Taken away by Eck. Here's Ted Eck turning. Using his skill to draw it back and away from Whitman. To Pastor, back through for Ted Eck. Ted, because of his size, as Ron Newman pointed out in the pregame show, looks a little awkward indoors sometimes. Tremendous outdoor player and figures to have a shot at being in the World Cup for the USA in 1994, although he won't play Sunday in the game against Costa Rica. Here's Preki up to Darrell Duran. This is a very interesting pace to this game as it comes back to Duran. Shot kicked out by Nagara. Rebound, they scored. Ted Eck. And he gets a gift as Eck found it wide open, and he merely had to put his toe on it and knock it in, and it's 3-2 St. Louis. We'll pause. 9:51 left here in the third period. The Storm take the lead. We'll be back in a moment. Ball, nice play out to Darrell Duran. Nagara makes the initial save, and it deflects off Kapsulis right to Ted Eck. That's about as easy as it gets. Eck's ninth goal. Darrell Duran picks up the assist at 5:09, and St. Louis leads for the first time since a minute into this game when Segota's goal put them on top at the 55-second mark. So now the Sockers playing from behind again. Down 3-2. Here is Ben Collins. Paul Wright takes it off the glass. Fighting off the defender, John Klein. Shot rejected. Comes back across to the other side, and Preki with it. Here's Collins turning it back over the other way for San Diego. lost it as he fell, and Preki gets it back for Daryl Duran. In midfield, Klein having trouble getting it away, but now it's Kevin Hundled on the near side. Hundled up the left side, and that's kicked away by Nogueira. A battle at midfield as Kerr and Eck went up. No foul as play goes on, and Preki hits the square pass back over to Ted Eck. Eck, in his 4th season in the MSL, 47 points in Kansas City last year, as it comes back to Victor Nogueira. And now over to Ben Collins. Eck had a great year a couple of seasons ago outdoors with Ottawa in the Canadian League. He scored 21 goals and 26 assists. That's when the national team people started taking notice of this guy. And now Bora Milutinovic has been using Eck on and off as Milutinovic continues to try and get a look at all the best players in the country. What a job he has done with that team. Not only in the results, but in the way he's approached it, as opposed to past administrations where sometimes certain players were not even invited, despite the fact everyone knew they had the pedigree and the ability to play the game. That's not happening anymore. No position is set. Here's a shot to goal by Banks. David Banks, perhaps taking advantage of a lack of sharpness by Jim Gorsuch. Gorsuch coming out and covering that near post a little too tightly, and he left a slot open for David Banks, and he finds the far post to tie it again. Ben Collins will get the assist. Nice ball, and Banks hits that first time. And Gorsuch just guarding that near post side a little too closely, and I think he was hoping for some support on the back post, but Banks will score it at 6:56. Collins gets the assist, and we're back to 3-3 here in the 3rd period. David Banks, last year, the Rookie of the Year, had 11 goals and 10 assists for 21 points, and he ties it up here in St. Louis with this goal coming here in the 3rd period. It'll be Banks' 2nd of the year. Ben Collins will pick up the assist. Back to the live action. Segota losing it to Whitman. Now Dougherty kicks at it. We'll have a foul, a late call by Kelly Mock. It's against Segota. .656 time of the Banks goal. So right after Eck puts St. Louis in the lead, the Sockers come right back again and continue to play very well on the road. Here's Usean. Square ball. Dougherty a little behind the play, but he's got it. Now creating an opportunity. Pins it around. Usean scores! Thompson Usean. A very nice outside of the right foot shot. And Paul Dougherty with a burst of speed of his own, and the Sockers quickly take the lead. Here's Dougherty at the tail end of his good effort. His shot went wide, but Usean, with his body kind of square to the boards, just reached out with the outside of the right foot, showed his good finishing skills there, as Gorsuch had come out trying to perhaps kick that away, if not grab it near the front of the penalty area. And Usean gets the goal to put the Sockers in the lead here at 7:26. Dougherty will get the assist on Tomo's 3rd goal of the year. The Sockers will hold their 2nd of 2 youth soccer nights on Sunday, December 8th, as they host the California Youth Soccer Association, or organization rather, and the Wichita Wings. That'll be a 6:05 kickoff at the Sports Arena. All CYSA players, their families, and their friends can take advantage of a very special $6 ticket price. Now, that's for that game only. If you're a youth 19 or under, at that game against the Wings, you'll get a free pack of Soccer Shots MSL trading cards, and you'll also have a chance to participate in the CYSA Youth Soccer Night Kick-on-Goal contest that will immediately follow the game. If you'd like to get one of these great $6 Youth Soccer Night tickets, call David Gross at the Sockers office at 224-GOAL. That's 224-4625. We kick it off to continue here in the 3rd period. Halfway through now, 7:30 left, and the Sockers on top as they get back-to-back goals from Banks and Usean to take the lead once again by a 4-3 count. Ball in the San Diego end, and tripping his way through the penalty area was Hundled. Now it comes back to the line, and a handball called against St. Louis. Dougherty gets the assist on the Usean goal at 7:26. So the Sockers score 2 goals in 30 seconds to take back the lead. San Diego goal scorers tonight: Ladouceur, Kerr, Banks, and you see it. There's that balanced scoring we talked about. Here's Crow up the middle. Kevin all the way to Kerr. Nice ball. And John just reaching out a brief moment late, pushing foul. And this will be against San Diego. Crow with a great run, and then just waited to the last possible moment before passing off to Kerr. It might have been a little ahead of him. Nonetheless, a good play as the Sockers looking strong here, stronger as the game goes on. If you joined us late, Brian Quinn out tonight as he's with the national team, getting set for their game in Dallas against Costa Rica. Also out of the lineup, Alex Golovnia. He's got a case of turf toe. He got kicked in Baltimore in the first half. That was last weekend. Here's Paul Wright for San Diego. He's got David Banks supporting on the left. Paul Wright plays it into the feet of Precki, who got all the way back defensively. Now a good throw by Gorsuch up for Ted Eck. Eck mauled from behind by Ladouceur. Play goes on. Eck trying to milk it for all he can at the front of the box as Ben Collins runs it back up the field. Here's Paul Wright with it, right at the red line. Eck still down at the other end of the field. That's why everyone's booing. Play will go on, though, until the Storm get possession. Eck still down and trying to get his way up, and Ben Collins will intentionally kick it out and into the seats, and they will stop play. And Eck looks like he will be all right. Well, fans of the World Champion Sockers can enjoy the remaining 18 home games as a soccer season ticket holder. You'll receive great benefits, including the club newsletter, playoff priority on your seats, and special invitations to private parties and clinics with the Sockers players. Now, the season ticket packages start as low as $90, and you can order yours by calling David Gross at the Sockers office during normal business hours at 224-GOAL, 224-4625. This David Gross character is one busy guy. 5:58 left here in the third period, and we will have a St. Louis restart as Collins kicked that one out. Rather sportsmanlike act by Collins to just kick that into the seats with Ted Eck down, and Eck is still out there. So obviously he was not nearly as badly hurt as the length of time he stayed down on the field might have suggested. He was upset he didn't get the foul called on Ladouceur, and maybe rightfully so. Here's Eck. Trying to work his way by David Banks unsuccessfully. David using his body well, and then he's mauled a little bit and then slaps Eck on the back. The foul will go against Eck, and the Sockers will restart it out of their own half of midfield. Another look is Banks just using his body, very rightfully so, and throwing his shoulder into Eck a little bit. And Ted stumbled somewhat, and that made his contact with Banks seem worse than was intended. A goal for the Sockers. Banks, as Clovio kicks it into his own goal. And the Storm looked very poor there. And it's 5-3 San Diego. A rather routine-looking play upfield as Banks was coming across. Clovio's there. And Clovio kicks it past Gorsuch. Fernando tried to settle that ball, and I think he nonchalanted it a little bit. And David Banks has his second goal of the game, and the Sockers have their biggest lead of the night. It's 5-3. Third of the year for David Banks as he took it all by himself up the right wing. We'll wait to see if there even is an assist on the play, and there won't be. It'll be unassisted at 9:28. 3 straight goals for the Sockers, and they're threatening to pull away here in the third period. Broken up at the red line, and now a foul called against San Diego as Whitman has a laugh over the call. And now the free kick as Segota stands behind the ball. Two-man wall. Wade is there with Whitman. To Precki, the referee gets in the way, and Precki's shot is wide. Here's Wade with a steal off to Oliveira. 3-on-1 with Ben Collins. Shot wide, rebound, and it'll go to Clovio. Whitman battling for it and's got it. Look at that speed as he ran by the Oliveira. The ball for Collins, however, not a good one, and St. Louis will recover in their own end. But right now, the St. Louis Storm having trouble as the Sockers have really come on here in the third period. This is such an important game for San Diego from the standpoint to see how they will do without Brian Quinn, because they know they will be without him maybe for the rest of the season in January, depending on the kind of arrangement they can work out with the national team. But at the very least, they're going to have to get used to playing without Quinn from time to time. And of course, they're not going to have Brian Quinn around forever, even on a part-time basis. And it's a good sign to see them play well as they have tonight. Here's Woodbury to center. Up the left side for Whitman. He's got Kerr with him. The pass in front. Kerr there, but Darrell Duran stayed with him and cleared it. Now Woodbury heads it across for Dougherty. 4:02 left in the third period. Dougherty looking for Whitman, played it behind him. Woodbury will collect the rebound. Nice turn, but then he lost it off the left foot, chases it, gets it back to Dougherty. Here's Kerr with a chance. Ball deflects into the corner for Whitman, kicked away by Duran. Woodbury missed kicking this one into the seats, and it'll be a goal kick for Jim Gorsuch. Here's a recap of the scoring so far for the Sockers. Ladouceur and Kerr in the first quarter. Sockers shut out in the second quarter, but Banks, Usean, and then Banks again have come back here in the third. I'd like to remind you that with each goal, as part of the Score for Ronald McDonald's Children Charities promotion, the Sockers will donate $25 to the Score for RMCC fund. So 5 goals and 5 contributions tonight to the Ronald McDonald's Children's Charity. Wonderful program the McDonald's and the Sockers have combined to come up with. Sockers leading 5-3. 3.5 minutes to go here in the third period. Hope you're enjoying our live coverage on the San Diego Cable Sports Network. Here's Wes Wade. Wade on a breakaway. Wade across the line. Shoots. Gorsuch save. He can't handle it out there, and he gets support as George Pastor gets back defensively. But Wes Wade with a clear look at goal. And game in and game out, the Sockers' quickness is so evident. Mark Santel back to Darrell Duran as we're under 3 minutes. Here's a steal by John Kerr. He's with Ladouceur. Jacques looks back. Sockers will make a quick change, getting Paul Wright on. Here's Ladouceur. Pushes it into the corner. Kerr centered it nicely, but nobody there for San Diego as Paul Wright was late coming on. Did the best he could, considering the bench change. And now Gorsuch will kick it to center. Ben Collins gets in the way of it, trips, falls, handball called as he hit it with his arm laying on the carpet. Ben a little frustrated with the call, feeling, hey, it was unintentional, which it was. Here's Claudio de Oliveira, whose season ended last year in a game against San Diego when he ruptured his Achilles tendon. He was one of their players, too, when that happened. He's been used sparingly tonight by Don Popovich, who apparently has been at odds with de Oliveira. Here is Kerr for San Diego. John clearing it back to Victor Nogueira. Victor has to come out and kick that one upfield. Now Kerr, boy, did he turn the right way there. Ball right at his feet as he came to it. Now Kerr goes to the bench, switching with Usean. Sockers looking sharp here tonight in St. Louis. Game 3 of a 4-game road stint spanning 2 weekends that will wrap up tomorrow in Wichita. Game will have live on 760 AM, 76 KFMB. Hope you join us for that tomorrow afternoon at 5:25. Here's Usean in the corner against the other number 21, Clavillo. We're down to 1:34 in the period. Ben Collins. And Banks will just play it back to Victor Nogueira. Here's Usean against Clavillo. Good matchup back to Woodbury. He has Whitman in front. Woodbury stepping over to his left side, run into by de Oliveira. Here's Paul Wright, the loose ball, trying to draw it back to the left foot. De Oliveira with the steal, plays it upfield. Here's Preki. Preki with a man up front, couldn't reach him. Here's Paul Wright, shoots wide. Back over to Preki, and he'll play it dangerously into Gorsuch, who collides with Paul Wright. Paul Wright did not practice all week with the Sockers. 2 of Paul's friends, incredibly, were killed in auto accidents in San Diego in separate incidents this past week. It's been a very troubling week for Paul, and obviously for the families concerned, and we all send our condolences out. In fact, Paul spending time with friends and family throughout the week. Just flew into St. Louis today for the game. It's been a troubling week for the young man. Here is Jim Gorsuch for St. Louis. Under 20 seconds to go. This is Mirko Castillo. Castillo, number 17, playing it back for Terry Brown and across for Preki. Down to 5 seconds left. Preki knows it, takes it to the corner. Castillo with his foot on it and directed it into a defender, and that's the buzzer to end the third period here in St. Louis. So the Storm get some new people out there like Castillo, and we saw a little bit of De Oliveira, and they start to come on late in the period. Perhaps an indication of what's to come in the fourth, we shall see. But at the end of 3, it's the San Diego Sockers 5 and the St. Louis Storm 3. And you're watching the Major Soccer League on the San Diego Cable Sports Network. Thanks very much for taking a moment, Ron. You've got to be pretty pleased with the way your team has played tonight on the road without Brian Quinn.
Oh, absolutely. I think we're working ever so hard, Randy, and I think the score actually should be a little bit more. We're at that score of 5-3 was twice this year we've been at 5-3 and we've lost the game. So I was hoping to get another goal here just before the end of that period. Paul Wright had a lovely chance and pulled it wide of the post. But just because of this score of 5-3, I would have liked to seen that make it 6-3.
We talked in the pregame show, you and I, Ron, about the balanced scoring on your team. And the way your system works, you don't have to rely on a guy like Thompson you see him to get you 64 goals like he did a year ago. Tonight, it's working out just the way it's supposed to, it would seem.
Yes, everybody looks like a threat, and it's a team effort again. And I think at the back, we've changed the defense a little bit at the back, and it's looking really good.
All right, Ron, best of luck the rest of the way.
Thank you, Randy.
The Auto Trader Coaches Report been brought to you by the Auto Trader. For effective and inexpensive advertising, pick up a copy of the Auto Trader. Well, after 3 quarters, last year the Sockers were unbeatable when they held the lead, 26-0. No other team had anything close to that kind of a record. This year the Sockers have lost a lead, but they are still 3-1. When leading after 3 quarters of play, they lead right now by a score of 5-3 as we head to the fourth quarter. We figure to have a close one here, though. Even the Sockers have scored the last 3 goals in a row. Of the prior 17 games between these two teams in the regular season, there have been 9 one-goal games, and a half dozen of those have gone to overtime, including the first game between the teams this year, which St. Louis won by a score of 6-5 in overtime. Ball out, and we will get a kick in as we are just 12 seconds into this fourth period. San Diego in the white jerseys, now defending the goal to our right and attacking right to left here in the fourth period. One other game in the MSL tonight, and at last report, start of the fourth quarter, Dallas leading Tacoma 2-1. That's at Reunion Arena in Dallas. Shot from long distance, and it'll be cleared from the San Diego penalty area up to West Way. Tries to lay it off for Ladouceur, and Jacques is going to get called for the foul, pushing off Greg Muir. Kelly Mock making the call. Kelly Mock has been embroiled this week in a controversy of his own, the referee from La Jolla. Last weekend, as you see the back of Mock there, he handed a red card to Tacoma coach Keith Weller for comments Weller made after Mock called a penalty on Tacoma's Neil Megson in overtime that led to a Dale Irvine goal and a Wichita victory. Well, this week, after reviewing the incident, the league has, what we're told, heavily fined Keith Weller, the head coach of the Tacoma Stars, for those post-game comments that were then relayed to a newspaper reporter in Tacoma and printed there. And when a coach goes public with criticism of the officials, more often than not, there's discipline, and that apparently has what has been meted out by Commissioner Earl Foreman. There's Mock there. Referees don't like a lot of publicity. They like to be the forgotten men. And you, of course, don't notice them. They're usually doing a terrific job. Here's Clavillo for San Diego over to Preki. For St. Louis, rather. To Segota. A couple of years ago, could have said that. Clavillo to Segota for San Diego. Not anymore. We have a penalty to the Sockers. Ladouceur is off for his 4th foul. That's what the call is. So St. Louis on a power play. And it's the first one we've had in the game. Crow clears it back into midfield with Jacques Ladouceur in the penalty box for 4 fouls and a half. Boy, Jacques picked those up in a hurry. Here's Preki. And knocked down by Crow. It'll come to Clavillo. Shot wide. And the rebound too hot for Duran to handle. He'll let it go to Preki at the point. Preki across to Segota. Broncos shot off Crow and out of play for corner kick. So they work it to Bronco, as you see Ladouceur there in the penalty box now. And that's Jacques' second penalty of the season. And there's still 1:06 to go in the St. Louis power play. So now they'll start from the corner spot to the right of Nogueira. Victor setting things up. He's got two pretty good ones in front of him, Crow and Banks back there. Whitman and Wade also killing the penalty. They'll bring one more over now. To Preki it comes. His shot wide, and Crow will clear it. And Wade will chase it. And Gorsuch hesitates for a moment, and Wes Wade got a touch of the ball and almost had himself an open netter. Back comes Darryl Durant on the line to Segota. Can't quite bring it in. Has to wait for it off the bounce. That gives Crow time. Now it's out to Clavillo with 46 to go in the power play. Here's Darryl Durant. Sockers lead 5-3. We're in the fourth. Preki over to Durant. To the wall. Back out from Eck to Clavillo. Got it away from Wade. Here's Durant. A shot. He just missed high. Back to Preki. He'll go to Durant again. He'll have to reach back for it. Banks quickly there as it comes to Clavillo with 20 seconds to go in the power play. Preki shot. He scores. Power play goal for Preki, and it's a one-goal game again, 5-4. Now Clavillo out to Preki, and watch number 14, Ted Eck, in front. As Preki shoots, Eck runs across the front of the penalty area right there, almost colliding with Nogueira, and creates the screen that allows Preki's shot to go through. So Preki with 2 goals tonight. That'll give him 7 on the year. And that ends a string of 3 unanswered goals by San Diego. The power play goal for Preki. The assist to Clavillo at 2:06. As Gorsuch covers it just ahead of Ladouceur. I'll throw up the left side. Woodbury after it for San Diego. Trying to get it away from Pastor. Here's Ladouceur, whose 4th foul cost the Sockers the penalty. It led to the power play goal by Preki. Here's Paul Wright. Paul stutter stepping his way to the line, gets it away to Ladouceur. Now a man breaking free, you see him, and he wanted the service from Ladouceur and should have got it. Never got the pass. There was a great lane there for Usean. Here's Woodbury falling, gets his balance back, tries to find Usean, but in traffic. Now back come the Storm, inspired by that Preki goal. This is John Klein over to Pastor. Good tackle there by Woodbury. Storm with possession and continuing to put on the pressure. Here's Hundled up the wing for Castillo. Mirko Castillo, number 17 from Peru. He played in the NPSL for the Chicago Power last year indoors. Scored 143 points, although that is not the standard point scoring system. They use a more generous system where certain types of goals are worth more. A header, for instance, in the other league is worth 3 points, as opposed to a standard goal from in your zone or from in the offensive zone, kicked in, worth 1 point. Here's Nogueira, long ball, and that will be over 3 lines. And they'll bring it back to the San Diego line for the restart as Wes Wade gets back there defensively. Preki will put it into play. Chance for St. Louis to tie it up off the dead ball situation. Here's Preki with a man on the left side, Greg Muir, who gets the pass. Shot kicked away by Nogueira. Wes Wade falling, looked for a foul, didn't get it. Preki misplays it. It comes to Gorsuch. Side puts it up for Muir. Now to Clavillo with 11 minutes left in regulation. 5-4 San Diego, now clinging to a 1-goal lead. St. Louis came out to start the 4th period playing much better than they had. Actually finished the 3rd period quite strongly. Here's Wade, gets it out to Dougherty. But Clavillo will close and send it back to Gorsuch. Popovich had not used much of Castillo or De Oliveira at all in the first half. Now they're getting more floor time, and things are turning a little bit for St. Louis. A couple of skillful players. Here's Nogueira for San Diego. Victor will drop it down to Ben Collins. We're down to 10:19 left. Centered for Dougherty. Ball turns, plays it over to Ladouceur. Jacques a 2-on-1 now with John Kerr. Jacques down the left side. The pass right on the foot of Darryl Duran. Good defense by Duran as Preki takes on Ben Collins, goes around him in midfield, but Ben's got good speed. He recovers as Preki's shot is blocked up high. Ladouceur getting back to head that one clear. Now here's Preki. In front, and Banks with a well-timed knockdown. Banks will just jog it upfield and drop it back for Ben Collins as both teams make changes on the run. 9:38 left in regulation. Sockers with a 5-4 lead. Initially, they trailed 1-0. Then St. Louis, after the Sockers had gone ahead 2-1, came back to eventually take a 3-2 lead. Sockers rattled off 3 unanswered to go ahead 5-3. And now it's 5-4. Ball played deep. Gorsuch has to wait for that last hop and has got it in the penalty area. Over to Darryl Duran. Here's George Pastor. Gives it away to John Kerr. Kerr in lots of traffic, trying to get it up the right side for Ladouceur. Kerr's foul and a free kick for San Diego at the red line. Jacques stands over the ball. Behind him is Paul Wright, who will get it. Over to Terry Woodbury. Here's Wright against Segota. Faced each other many times in practice. Not so many times in games, although a few more than some of the other matchups against Segota because, of course, Paul Wright played in Cleveland. Here's Santel. Santel playing it ahead for Pastor. Back for Mark Santel. He moves away from Ladouceur and leaves it for Clavillo. Now across to John Klein. Klein back to Santel. In front, chance for Bronco. Watched there by Woodbury. It comes back to Clavillo at the point. He thought about a left footer, now gets it back to the right side. Shot blocked by Woodbury, and he's got speed. And he's got John Kerr with him. And he's shoved from behind by Clavillo. No foul on the play as it comes back to Gorsuch. Both teams make wholesale line changes here as we're down to 8-10 in the fourth period. 5-4 Sockers lead. Here's Bronco Segota. Up for Preki. Ben Collins there as Preki heads it off the wall to Nogueira. David Banks back on the right side of his defensive third as Dougherty comes on and takes the pass. And he's tripped by Claudio de Oliveira. Sockers bench calling for a 2-minute penalty, but it'll just be a simple foul. Dougherty with a great play that he won't get a point on, but we'll all remember it. The goal by John Kerr back in the first period. Whitman got the assist, but it came as a result of a nice ball by Paul Dougherty out of midfield. He really looked like a playmaker there. Banks a good pace shot, and Gorsuch with the save. The quick outlet to Ted Eck. Preki stood up by Ben Collins. Back comes San Diego. Collins to center. To the overlapping Thompson UC, and he's got Dougherty with him. They score! What a play by UCN, and it's 6-4. You could see it develop on the turnover as Ben Collins stripped Preki. And what a finishing touch as UCN hit a bullet to Paul Dougherty. And that's the kind of play they expected from Thompson UCN. Look at this service. Outside of the right foot, bending toward Dougherty. And remember, UCN has to remember about Dougherty's size. Paul gets up high enough. And we go to a break. 7:25 to go. It's 6-4 San Diego. Finding the spot, and Dougherty getting all of that. And Paul, who had to be a little disappointed with his production so far, gets his second goal of the year. UCN gets a huge assist there at 7:35, and it is 6-4 San Diego. That was some pretty stuff, and we have seen some gorgeous San Diego goals in this game tonight, and that was about the best we've seen. Here's Whitman playing it over the head of Alex Hapsalis. Alex will race toward it, but Gorsuch will hold it in the penalty area. Now St. Louis playing from a 2-goal deficit with 7:05 left here in the fourth period. Here's Eck with some room. Ben Collins back defensively. Eck banks it off the wall. It's cleared by Crow, but not out. Mark Santel from the left point. He'll shoot it into Whitman and chase his own rebound. Credit to Ben Collins on that play, too. He started it with the strip of Preki at center, and that turned things around. And he found UCN on the cross field pass as Thompson was overlapping out of the back. Chance in front for George Pastor. They're going to call a foul in the penalty area. A handball, and it's going to be a shootout for St. Louis. Ben Collins called for the handball in the penalty area, and we're going to get a St. Louis shootout. Let's watch it right here as it comes off the head toward Pastor, and Ben Collins quite clearly put his arm up and knocked it away from the forehead of George Pastor. Collins will go to the penalty box. He'll serve 2 minutes whether or not they score on the shootout or not. And St. Louis with a chance for a 2-goal turn here if they can score on the power play, or if they can score on the shootout. Preki will take it. And now a misconduct penalty as well to, I believe, Wes Wade, who said something to Kelly Moss. So Wade makes his way over to the box. There's the blue card. And things go from bad to worse here, although that will not result in another penalty, at least a time penalty. It will take one of the Sockers' more effective defensive players off the field as Wes Wade will sit for 2. Here's Preki then, set for the shootout. He has 5 seconds to score. Preki in on goal. The step over move, and he hits it wide. Victor Nogueira, the best goalkeeper in this league, against one of the best finishers, Preki. And so the Sockers have that half of the situation under control as Preki put a couple of fancy moves there with the left foot on Victor, but Victor held his ground. And then Preki just didn't have the angle anymore with Victor staying with him, and he shot it into the board. So now the power play for St. Louis, and I still can't understand why this rule wasn't changed. And I've been lobbying this for a while now, and you're probably sick about hearing it, but one more time, if you get a shootout, you shouldn't also get an additional 2 minutes, and that's the way the rule reads in the MSL, and it ought to be changed. One or the other. Maybe you should have your choice, I don't know, but this is penalizing the team too much for that handball. So now the power play for St. Louis. Shot by Clavillo, saved off the header. It hits the woodwork right where Preki hit it, and Crow will clear it. My point being, Nogueira does such a great job stopping Preki on the shootout, but then a power play goal can go in, and it really negates the save off Preki. 6:20 left in the regulation portion of the game. Preki shoots it into Victor's feet. Here's Preki again down the right side, double team, forced to play it back out to Segota. Storm on the power play for another minute 30. They have a power play goal tonight. The earlier goal, as Segota is stopped by Nogueira. The earlier goal by St. Louis on the power play is scored by Preki. Here's Durant to Preki, scores! And that's what I mean about the rule. It's just not fair. You get a shootout and 2 minutes on a power play, and you can only stop Preki so many times. Victor Nogueira that time might have done a better job with it. And we're back to a 1-goal game again. Well, you youth soccer players age 19 and under, we invite you to join the McDonald's Junior Soccers. You'll receive a special club membership card. It's good for 2 Soccers game tickets, an additional $1 off the regular youth ticket price, and a free low-fat yogurt cone at McDonald's, and a special invitation to the Junior Soccers Clinic and Picnic with the players. If you'd like to join the McDonald's Junior Soccers, call the Soccers office at 224-GOAL. The McDonald's Junior Soccers are also sponsored by 7-Eleven, Keebler, and Coca-Cola. Preki with the goal on the power play for the hat trick, and his 8th of the season. Daryl Duran gets the assist as it comes at 9:09. Wes Wade still in the penalty box, and they have a time penalty up for Wes. So they did give him a time penalty. We were under the impression it was just a misconduct. I think that's erroneous. It shouldn't really be up on the clock. They gave him a time penalty, but there is no disadvantage. Both teams have 5 men on the field plus the goalkeepers. So we were right in our assertion at the beginning. Woodbury is shot, and that just missed. Here's Crow on the rebound as Terry was going top corner, and boy, he didn't miss it by much. Back to Nogueira now. The Sockers with a 1-goal lead. 6-5 the score. Here's Eck. He'll play it back. Klein working across for this side for Darrell Duran. You see the time left there. We're under 6 minutes. George Pastor in the corner and then called for the foul is Terry Woodbury. So St. Louis with a wonderful opportunity here on the free kick. Out of the corner, it's Darrell Duran. Back to Brecky, and he'll miss it by a bunch. Klein on the rebound, drives it into John Kerr. It'll rebound out to Tedek, but Kerr will clear it beyond center. 5:03 left in regulation. Brecky with the ball. He has 3 goals tonight. And a foul called against Paul Dougherty, kicking Brecky. Look at those numbers. 13 points in 3 games. Brecky is on a roll early in the season. Now the free kick back out at the red line. Brecky gets it to the left foot, back over to the right. A shot parried away by Nogueira. To Darrell Duran. Duran with room, shoots it into Woodbury. It comes back to number 11 like a magnet. Brecky to Duran. Nice pass, but it's read by Woodbury, who steps up and takes it away from Kevin Hundle. Hundle playing it, or rather Woodbury playing it right into Eck, but it's picked up by Nogueira. Down to 4:30 left. Here's a nice feed for Ladouceur. He's got Usian and Dougherty with. Pass to Paul. Back into the corner for Ladouceur. Jacques drives it wide off the glass. Usian after the rebound. Darrell Duran will play it out to center. Brecky kicks it right to David Banks, who sends it back to Nogueira. Sockers trying to preserve their lead on the road here. 6-5 the score. You'll recall they led in Baltimore at the half 5-3 and went on to lose 6-5. Or check that, 8-7. Hoping not to repeat that situation where they converted a lead into a loss. Here's Nogueira long pass. Look for Usian, but Clavillo is there out to Segota. On now to Kevin Hundle. Hundle running with Segota and Pastor. The pass right into the feet of Ben Collins. 3:32 left in regulation. Nogueira. Pass up for John Kerr Jr. John along the near boards. Back it comes. Chance for Paul right out of the corner. Paul driving at it. It'll go off the rebound over the head of Kerr. Ladouceur knocks it down for John Kerr, who sends it back to David Banks. 3:05 left to go. Here's Paul Wright. He'll knock it down with a right foot that was a little too high for the referee's liking. And now Paul Wright getting in the way of the restart, and Gorsuch doesn't like it. Here's Brecky. 6-5 the score, San Diego leading. Collins stopped it for a moment. Brecky gets it back. Brecky doing his thing tonight. Collins, nice poke ahead for Usian. Here's Thompson Usian with Paul Wright. Rebounded. And comes back to Whitman. Now it's Ben Collins. Left foot pass. In front, Usian with the loose ball. And Klein back to help out Gorsuch as we're down to 2:22. Still no indication that Gorsuch may come out. Of course, Don Popovich, the coach of the Storm, doesn't really like the 6th attacker strategy as it's cleared back to Victor Nogueira. Nogueira just sets it down in front of the box. And now he'll unload to midfield. John Kerr after it there. Gets good position on Clavillo, and then he's fouled. And the Sockers will restart from there. Kerr will head upfield now as it's played back for Terry Woodbury to Nogueira with under 2 minutes left, and Victor uncharacteristically kicks it out of play, and only now does Wes Wayne come out of the penalty box. They had to wait for a legal substitution point, and now he's out. So we'll have the goalkeeper change. While they do that, we want to remind you that Christmas is just around the corner, and it's time to start thinking about gifts. The Sockers have the perfect present for everyone in the family, Santa Soccer Bags. It's an insulated lunch sack filled with Sockers trinkets, including wristbands, a pencil, a keychain flashlight, a jumbo paper clip, and more. It's the perfect under-the-tree gift for the soccer fan of any age. If you can't make it to the games, just call the Sockers office at 224-GOAL and ask for your mail order brochure. Exciting soccer souvenirs on hand through mail order or at each Sockers game at the San Diego Sports Arena. Well, Fernando Clavillo is now going to go in as the extra attacker for the Storm. There's a minute 52 left in regulation. The Sockers with a 6-5 lead. As you see Clavillo, the playing assistant coach, talking things over with his teammate. The problem for teams against San Diego with this strategy is that with the speed the Sockers have now on the field, when they get people like Woodbury and Wright and Whitman on the field at the same time, a Wes Wade, it is very difficult to play this strategy because you leave that net empty at the other end, one missed kick, one turnover, and the Sockers are going to be down at that other end in just a blink of an eye. And teams know that. And that's why you need to have a quick guy like Clavillo back there as the sixth attacker. But certainly a difficult spot here for St. Louis. Down 6-5, a minute 52 left. They can only hope that Preki continue to do what he's done tonight. Preki with 3 goals, and here he is. Over to Clavillo. Sockers have some of those speed burners on the field, but here's Preki. Into the corner, Segota across, and it was too high for Castillo. Daryl Duran will bounce it in front for Ted Eck. Paul Wright after the loose ball. Storm have it back. Daryl Duran in the corner. Paul Wright gets it for a moment. Turns it over. Segota scores! Paul Wright gets a little fancy in his own zone here rather than just trying to get rid of it. And he kicked it into a teammate, and it came off the foot of Eck to Segota, and Bronco goes upstairs. And we are tied with a minute 25 left. Segota's second goal of the game. He has not done that much tonight, to be honest. He got the early goal 55 seconds in, but he has a knack for the dramatic, doesn't he? And Segota ties it. And now Gorsick back in the goal for St. Louis. So we're down to the 1-goal game again. Actually tied, and it would seem at least that this one will be decided by 1 goal. Broncos 8 from Ted Eck at 13:35. Now the long feed into the San Diego zone. Banks will kick this one high and to Usian. Nicely played over to Dougherty. Ahead for Jacques Ladouceur, but good speed by Huddle to get back. Didn't play a good ball though. Now it comes to Eck. We're under a minute. Eck, upended from behind by Ladouceur, plays it to Woodbury. Now let's see the Sockers poised in a tough situation here with some of their new players. Here's Banks, playing it back for Terry Woodbury. Woodbury will clear it to Victor Noguera. Down to 40 seconds as it comes to Dougherty on the far glass. Tied at 6 and overtime. A very real possibility now, but here's Woodbury. Terry in the middle to Dougherty. He won't get it. Let's see who it went off. I believe kicked out by the St. Louis player, which will give it back to the Sockers on a restart. And that is one of the Storm players, Greg Muir, slow to get up. That's from our camera right behind Jim Gorsuch. Now a corner kick for San Diego with 30 seconds left. Boy, if there were 20 seconds fewer, about 10 left, Newman would pull his goalkeeper. Let's see what they do on the restart. Here's Whitman over the ball out there with Wright, Usian, Banks, and Woodbury. Whitman. Right on goal, and Gorsuch grabs it. Banks won't give Jimmy much room as Gorsuch unloads upfield. And Usian will get back for this and clear it to Noguera with 20 seconds to go. 6-6 the score. Sockers had a 2-goal lead, but weren't able to hold it. Here's Woodbury into the corner. Usian for position. 2 blue jerseys back there. Daryl Duran will dig it out with 4 seconds left. And we are going to go to sudden death overtime. So once again, these teams will need part of an extra period at the very least to settle the evening's business. We talked about all the 1-goal games before this. It'll now be out of 18 games, 10 one-goal games. 6-6 our score here as we will go to the sudden death overtime period. In overtime, St. Louis with a record of 4-3 against San Diego. So this will be the 8th of those 10 one-goal games that will be an overtime game. I guess we made our point. These teams play each other very, very close in the regular season. It changes in the playoffs, though, but that's another story. So we will go to the overtime period. The Sockers looking to try and begin the second half of this road trip on a winning note here in St. Louis against a team that's been tough to put away. We'll be back in a moment with overtime. It's San Diego 6, St. Louis 6. You're watching the MSL on the San Diego Cable Sports Network. San Diego 6, St. Louis 6. Sockers in the white will kick it off and attack right to left. They had a 6-4 lead, but St. Louis came back as Bronco Segota tied the game in the dying moments on the 6th attacker, and now a foul against John Kerr. The Segota goal came at 13:35. A 6th attacker goal. 10x set it up. Broncos second of the game and 8th of the year. Sockers are 0-1 in overtime. They're only lost to St. Louis. The Storm are 1-1 in OT. Now Crow with John Kerr in the overtime. Off the glass it'll come. Kerr trying to find it in the crowd. It's cleared out by St. Louis to Whitman at center for San Diego. And Tim will let it bounce all the way and back to Victor Nogueira. We are in the first minute of overtime. Back heel by Kerr. Nice ball. But John Klein was running step for step with Whitman. Good thing. Now a nice job by Collins getting it out of the air on the feed for Segota. Here's Benny looking for support. Paul Wright running off the right wing. It comes to Kerr. He'll finesse it to the left side. Shot, he scores! John Kerr wins it in overtime. And what a brilliant goal. 7-6 the final. And John Kerr with a brilliant way to end this one. I thought we'd seen the prettiest goal when Dougherty headed it from Usean, but we had, this is the goal of the game. And this place empties out, and the San Diego Sockers win it in overtime. And look at the skill involved with this goal. Paul Wright made a good run to draw the attention to the right side. Look at this. Right foot to the left side, and off the half volley, roofs it just under the crossbar. John Kerr, who in my mind is already Rookie of the Year, and the MSL wins it. The Sockers file off the field, and this one is in the books as the San Diego Sockers defeat the Storm 7-6. The winning goal coming 57 seconds into the overtime period. Ben Collins will get the assist. The goal to John Kerr, his second of the game and 6th of the season. And what a thrilling end to a great game here in St. Louis. The final score in overtime, San Diego 7, St. Louis 6. And you're watching the Major Soccer League on the San Diego Cable Sports Network. The San Diego Sockers on a goal 57 seconds into overtime have defeated the St. Louis Storm by a final score of 7-6. Let's go down to field level and join our star of the game, the man who scored the winning goal, his second of the night. And, John, we've already named you Rookie of the Year. Just forget it. You know, we're only 7 games into the year. Congratulations. That was a great way to finish what I think you'd agree was a great game.
Yeah, we're very excited, and I'm very excited to get that winning goal. It's a good time to get a win our first game of this road trip, and we're off to Wichita tomorrow to get another win.
John, tell us about the goal. That looked like you used a lot of your outdoor skills there to get that ball over to the left side for the goal.
Yeah, well, I just did what my instincts told me, and I was fortunate enough to get the goal on target, and it went in. I'm very excited.
John, that was your second goal of the night. You've got 6 goals on the year. You had relatively no indoor experience at this level coming in. Of course, you had quite a background in the outdoor game. Obviously, you've made the transition in the types of game and also into the San Diego system very quickly. Why do you think that is?
Well, it's a good team to play with. We have a lot of good experienced players, and I like the way San Diego plays, and I've been watching indoor soccer all my life in Baltimore, and I used to love San Diego coming to Baltimore and really showing them how to play soccer. So when I got a chance to come to play indoor in the States, I knew I wanted to play with San Diego.
Well, John, just an outstanding effort tonight. You've had some other goals this year. Tell us about the one against Baltimore, which was a beauty.
Yeah, well, it was a free kick, or corner kick from Brian Quinn, and we worked on this in practice the day before, and he just flicked it in the middle, and I was lucky enough to get my head on it and score.
Well, you seem to be in a lot of the action tonight, John. Great effort, I think, by all of you, and I know playing without Brian Quinn is something that we talk about a lot in the media, but I know it's important to you guys, too, to be able to make up for the absence of a great player like Brian, and that has to make tonight's victory even sweeter.
That's true.
All right, John, congratulations. John Kerr, our player of the game, 2 goals, including the winner in overtime, as the Sockers defeat St. Louis by a final in overtime of 7-6. We'll be back to wrap it up from the arena after this. Final of 7-6 in overtime. San Diego's record improves to 4-3, while the Storm dropped to 3-4. The World Champions' next television game here on the San Diego Cable Sports Network will be Friday, December 13th. As we travel to Dallas to battle the Sidekicks, that'll be a live 5:30 kickoff. That's the Sockers and Dallas live on Friday, December 13th, right here on the San Diego Cable Sports Network at 5:30. And don't forget, we're on the radio side tomorrow afternoon, 5:25, our pregame show live from Wichita. It's the Sockers and the Wings on 760 AM, 76 KFMB. We hope you can join us for that. Once again, the final score of the San Diego Sockers 7, the St. Louis Storm 6 in overtime. For our producer, Tom Rand, and our entire crew here in St. Louis, Randy Hahn saying good night from the St. Louis Arena.
Tonight's Major Soccer League action featuring the World Champion Sockers on the San Diego Cable Sports Network has been brought to you in part by McDonald's, proud official sponsor of the McDonald's Junior Soccers and Summer Camp programs. By the Auto Trader. For effective and inexpensive advertising, pick up a copy of the Auto Trader. By U.S. Air. U.S. Air begins with you. And by Corona Beer. Enjoy Corona Extra and Corona Light. This has been an exclusive presentation of the World Champion San Diego Sockers, live on the San Diego Cable Sports Network.